We're live.
We're live. Episode 5.
This one's going to be a change, I guess, from the last few episodes, which is good.
Change is always good.
I was scrolling the internet as I'm wont to do and scrolled on some very unfortunate news. It was unfortunate to me because I am a big fan of this particular author. The scandal that he is embroiled in is really unfortunate for all parties involved because I don't want to think of anybody as a despicable human being, but these allegations are despicable. And he's not the only one out there. Of course, we hear about all of these controversies, whether they be sexual assault or sexual negligence or racism or harassment. We have all of these scandals going around right now. And I just felt like this would be a great piece to discuss here on the podcast. So that's what we're going to do today.
Bookish Controversies and the Love of Art.
How are we going to continue to partake in this art, this chosen art form that we have, and deal with the guilt that we face, the pressures that we face to fall in with the crowd, respect those who have been wronged, and respect the art that we love, and kind of juggle those two things together. So we're going to get into it.
It is, because it's not a new struggle.
It's not. So, of course, I did a little research as I was going through here. I went back, and of course, the first thing that popped into my mind was H.P. Lovecraft, because if you're a horror fan, you have some very well-known authors. You have H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe, and even as new as Stephen King and Dean Koontz, and all of these big names in horror. They wrote incredible stories that changed the entire genre. And of course, there are authors in every genre in which this is the case. But H.P. Lovecraft is synonymous with the word racism. His books were full of it. It's not even a product of its time. It is truly heinous in its obvious racism. So I spend a lot of time reading Lovecraft, and it's impossible not to pick up on the racism that is spread throughout his stories. Some of them are a little more subtle, but still prevalent just the same. And there are authors out there that have picked up on these pieces and decided to rework his writings and his stories to better reflect their stories or their race or their creed, whatever the case may be. Matt Rife with Lovecraft Country wrote an incredible piece joining that cosmic horror with Jim Crow South issues of racism and bigotry. And then I'm reminded of The Ballad of Black Tom from Victor Lavelle, which is a Lovecraft retelling from a Black perspective in Harlem. And I loved every piece of that. Victor Lavelle is such an incredible writer. There are plenty of examples in which we have seen this. Charles Dickens, racism. Dr. Seuss, racist imagery. Mark Twain, racism again. A lot of these are products of their time. That doesn't mean they get a pass. So while this isn't a new issue, we have some very new issues coming to light. And I know we've got a big author right now that just launched a book that is the biggest book of the last 20 years, Rebecca Yarros. And I know she has faced some scrutiny and some controversy. And I know you brought that up there. So do you want to touch on that?
All right, so Rebecca Yarros recently faced criticism for misusing Gaelic in her book while calling it Gaelic. This was a huge controversy because even when it was brought to her attention, she said, well, I'm going to continue pronouncing it as it is with Gaelic. And of course, that brought a few feathers, which it should. But her books are huge right now, and not even just the whole Fourth Wing thing going on, but she also has
Their romances, they're military romance.
the military romance. I haven't read them yet, but I do have a few of them on my list just because I'm interested. They're very different from the whole Fourth Wing world. Then you have Colleen Hoover. And she recently had a bunch of stuff going on regarding her, not even just the recent movie, It Ends With Us, but more so for a while now, it's been stated that her books promote anti-feminist messages and that it glamorizes domestic abuse. There's also recent news of her retiring from writing due to the controversy with It Ends With Us. She already disabled her social media account.
Yeah, I think we see this a lot of times. Those were two very different reactions. One doubled down, which I'll get into double downing and how dangerous that can be when you make a mistake in just a moment. But another one's just running from it.
Mhm.
Neither of those are the right response.
No,
I
not
don't
at all.
know that there is a right or a wrong response, but if there was a wrong one, it's those two there.
Yeah.
Doubling down on offending an entire community of people is absolute bonkers to me. Now, I think there's something that can be said about Colleen Hoover where the views and what we take from books is subjective,
Mhm.
but she definitely touches on domestic violence a lot in her books. I have not personally read any of them. I know Verity is on our list, and we're still going to get to it at some point. And I know that one definitely has some trigger warnings in there.
Mhm.
I don't know if I see it as glamorizing it, but that doesn't matter. I
Mhm.
think there's a big piece of this where you can't go, well, I disagree, or, well, that didn't offend me. We can't do that.
Mhm.
People have been offended and we need to address it. And that may not be the intention, but if you double down on it, like Rebecca Yarros or J.K. Rowling, who I'm going to talk on here in a moment, that is so detrimental to your career. Rowling has said some transphobic comments against the trans community. And when she was confronted on that, she doubled down that there was nothing wrong with her comments. There's a known issue with the fact that she has no diversity in her Harry Potter novels. The other books that she's written are inconsequential. There is no diversity in Harry Potter. It's lacking that diversity. And in the culture we have going on right now, where everyone is moving away from diversity, we know for a fact that diversity is how we strengthen our community, not tear it down.
Exactly. Through unity.
So those are some big ones. And of course, I have saved the worst for last. And that would be my favorite author, Neil Gaiman, who is embroiled in a sexual assault and sexual misconduct controversy. He's not new to controversy. I know he has some issues during the lockdown of COVID in which he was breaking COVID protocols. That's one thing. Still not great. You're putting your health and other people's health at risk. But this takes the cake for unexpected on my bingo card for the year. And as much as I'm a fan of Gaiman, I don't follow him that closely. So I didn't know about it until just a week or so. But now it's all that I see in my feeds. I'm not going to get into the details on who said what and what the allegations are. However, there have been some very sweeping repercussions for Gaiman, to which he has lost all of his publishers, new projects, current projects that are going to be canceled. He's been dropped from TV appearances and tours and truly is feeling the brunt of this full cancellation. So, what we want to explore on this episode is going to be diving into a few of these things, as well as how we approach the separation of artist and art.
So, with all the current and the past controversies, I think it's important to discuss how we're actually in a culture where it is easier to follow the trend of others versus following our own research and values before deciding to support or abandon.
Yeah, I think controversy is a two-part issue. The first part we are not going to touch on here.
Mm-mm.
I think there are governmental, religious, community based things where books are banned or books are communicated as problematic in that circle. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the responsibility that falls to us as a reader to decide whether to continue to ingest art by the artists that are embroiled in controversy. So we're talking artists and their art, not stances as far as whether they are ethically or morally sound. We simply want to talk about how we approach recognizing and appreciating art despite the controversies and the issues with these artists.
I think that's very important to remember that part of it, that's the stance that we're taking. It's not, do we agree? Do we not agree? It's more so speaking from the actual art of it. And definitely understand that even if you might not be the target of the controversy or feel it doesn't apply to you, that doesn't mean that the issue is any less hurtful and dangerous to our society at large.
Yeah, that's quiet complacency. And that causes more harm than good in
Mhm.
all of those situations. Many people feel emboldened to speak that, well, this didn't affect me, or I'm not part of that group, so it doesn't offend me. And that this doesn't apply to me doesn't mean it's not problematic. It's this subtle validation that gives support to people with these views to continue doing what they're doing or saying what they're saying without fear of repercussion because they have this quiet complacency and support. So we're not stating that you have to fall in with others who do or feel the same way or want to speak up or take action. We are really just talking about how we can continue to do the thing we love without feeling guilty or as if we are supporting somebody we don't wish to support or causes that we don't wish to support or people who've been hurt and not giving them the support they need. We want to talk about the art.
And I think the reader has that right to consume and appreciate art separate from the artist and the problematic nature of it. However, there is this pesky issue of where you draw that line. And I think that is a completely subjective and personal choice. Much the same about how we often feel the government overreaching and telling the world what books they can and cannot read. We as consumers must decide what we want to consume and who we wish to support. And then comes the social aspect of it. I think this is where the majority of the trends of canceling, boycotting, and petition comes into play. We create these communities where it feels like participating in these actions, we feel as if we are a part of the solution, but oftentimes the implementation of these actions and punishments come largely before the true judgment has actually been handed down.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We make snap judgments on people, and those judgments in the culture that we have now come with real world punishments and repercussions. So, one of the things we talked about off air was Jonathan Majors. Majors was the up and coming star.
Hmm.
Lovecraft Country was
That show was
huge.
awesome.
The show was incredible. One season, I wanted another, but that was where I was introduced to him. I know he was in several other pieces that I've seen, but he
Mhm.
didn't stand out. Well, he stood out in that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he was handed the ultimate holy grail in becoming a major villain in the
Hmm.
Marvel Universe. And in doing so, he had the brightest star in the sky. He was skyrocketing. And then he was sidelined. He was completely canceled because of domestic abuse allegations
Hmm.
that were later rescinded. And again, we are not speaking on the validity of those claims because coercion and other things can come into play. We are not saying he is innocent. However, he lost Marvel. He lost the Army recruitment video that was going to be making its rounds. And it actually punished other people in the industry, such as Michael B. Jordan
Hmm.
and that entire film of Creed 3, because they were canceling majors, which had repercussions on other people. Right or wrong, we're simply saying we all react in real time. And that's why some people tend to think the courts move too slow. What the courts are doing, and I'm not saying that they don't make mistakes, what the courts are doing is trying to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that somebody has done wrong. And we don't do that. We don't care. We have our own personal biases and our own personal judgments, and we make snap judgments and then we hold to them.
And I think it's easier now with this age of TikTok and social media because you can make one clip of your own opinion and then all of a sudden you're viral and you can't take that back.
Tell me that you don't see Will Smith differently.
Man.
Right or wrong, I'm not here to say, but he made a major mistake in taking this is even better because we're showing how controversy can be started because of a snap judgment.
Mm-hmm.
He made a huge mistake where he was in the heat of the moment and decided to go and take action on something. So let this be very well known. We can make mistakes as well. And so part of the support or rescission of support for an artist needs to come after you feel this decision is right for you. Now, I personally do not support J.K. Rowling due to her transphobic comments before and her doubling down of that sentiment. And I will not continue to support any future projects she has, whether they are inside the Harry Potter universe or not. And that is a decision I have made. And that comes with the repercussions for me, because now I can't enjoy some of the things that I love in the Harry Potter universe that are going to be coming out, such as new shows or new movies or new books that may reside in the universe, if they will directly support her, which they will. It's too big of an IP, even with her not being creatively connected to it, for her not to receive support. Now, I already own all the books.
You already bought them, so you can reread them.
We got all the movies.
You can rewatch those too.
It's already done.
Yeah.
She's not going to get a new dollar every time I crack a page or put the DVD in. Now,
That's true.
choosing not to partake in that in any streaming services and things like that, that is my decision that I'm doing. But I'm not going to push that on other people. My children want to watch that or want to support the new projects coming out, or anybody else in my household. I'm not here to be a dictator of that. I simply want to make sure that people are educated on the stance. And I hope that she can come back from this in some way, shape, or form and admit her wrongdoing in it and show some support, not just throw some money at it, but truly show some support for the community and own up to her mistakes. But we're human and we are flawed, and I don't believe that's going to be the case.
I want to stress here that we are not shaming anyone for taking part in these actions, simply stating our own opinion on the matter. We have to be careful that we toe the line between idolizing the artists versus their actual art.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to say I am a total fanboy when it comes to some of my favorite authors. You hear me talk about on every episode, and you're not going to escape it just because we're talking about controversy today. I've been gushing about Brandon Sanderson lately. And of course, I've already said Neil Gaiman is one of my all-time favorite authors. But it's vital to understand that our appreciation for these artists' work does not condone any of their actions off the page. Often, we are unable to make the distinction between our affinity for a person's art and their personal views. They become synonymous. It is okay to criticize a person's actions separate from their art, and vice versa. Oftentimes, a book can be problematic due to a lack of education on a subject or ignorance on part of the author or publisher, like we talked about earlier with the Gaelic. That was ignorance on the part of Yaros, and then, of course, we made it even worse by doubling down. This does not mean by supporting the art or continuing to love the art that we condone the issue, and it all comes down to how the author accepts and ultimately handles their mistake. We've seen artists, they double down with their hurtful rhetoric and refuse to concede that they may need to enact change on their part. My continual support or lack of support for someone's art is a personal decision that is mine to bear and will be the product of key takeaways from the subject and ultimate verdict decided after researching the subject myself. So, what do? There's this huge amount of pressure as a member of this community, this industry in literary arts, that we need to fall in line with the generally accepted consensus on the topic. And with that comes a modicum of guilt if you still want to find a way to enjoy the art despite the verdict being dealt. So how do we deal with this guilt, and should it matter?
It's completely up to you. But here are some things that have been discussed and explored online. If you feel like you want to find creative ways to consume these pieces without supporting or minimizing support for the author, publisher, platform, any of those things, you might want to take books from the library. Or you can buy them secondhand where no proceeds from that book actually directly benefit the persons in question. If you wish to remove all support for the parties in question, you may want to look for alternatives. There are a lot of pages, forums, articles, videos, blogs, all of that stuff that will help you find alternatives to these books, series, topics, genres, and more. If you wish to be a voice amongst the crowd enacting change, you can take part in these petitions, make content to educate and inform your audience, or work directly with local organizations to impact your local community, supporting local charities and support groups for those affected. We are not issuing judgment, taking sides, or otherwise engaging in speculation on the validation of these controversies, nor are we condoning these acts of discrimination, harassment, hate, or violence, whether alleged or confirmed.
We are simply saying you are not alone in your struggle when it comes to appreciating art in our chosen medium amidst what seems to be a constantly spiraling culture of division and hate.
We are here to help you find ways to enjoy this incredible hobby without sacrificing your happiness nor your morals. So, we've talked a great deal about supporting the art, but now let's take a pivot to the social community and the recent craze of bookish trends. I know I am not the only one that has seen all of this craziness happening, but where do we begin? I'm going to start with Onyx Storm. According to Bookscan, it was the fastest selling adult novel since they started tracking book sales 20 years ago. It sold 2.7 million copies in the first week. I feel like it was honestly the first day, but it says the first week. Some other notable releases we were able to research were Spare, which was Prince Harry's memoir. Harry Potter, although this is middle grade and it's not the same as the adult novel necessarily, it deserves to be mentioned. 50 Shades of Grey, and Colleen Hoover's recent spike due to TikTok influence. I honestly want to talk about how difficult it was to get a book at launch. Me personally, I honestly remember it was negative, what, 9 degrees outside was the actual temperature that we had was -9. None of the kids were in school. It was too cold to go anywhere. But what I have been seeing and hearing is that everyone was getting up at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning to get these super special edition books from Target. I'm gonna try not to go there, but
We all remember the Stanley
yes.
issue with the red Stanley. That was last year, I think, Valentine's
Oh
Day.
my god.
These people go crazy for these special editions and these one of a kind that aren't one
Mhm.
of a kind.
Yeah. Well, Target, from what I'm seeing, they delivered some of these stores with like 5 copies. So you have people trying to get these super special Target editions, which were like 19 bucks. Then you had the, what was it? The deluxe special edition, which was the one that was everyone was pre-ordering since the beginning of time last year. Everybody pre-ordered those. Those I think they were cheaper than special editions, whichever Target ones. And then you have their plain Jane ones. Well, I was like, well, I want a Target one. But I didn't wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I got up and I said, you know what, let me just see what they have. I got up at 7 o'clock. Everything was sold out within our area. And I checked, here we are in Ohio. I checked Lorraine, well, Amherst. I checked Avon. I checked North Olmsted. All of those areas, they were all sold out. All of the books, none of them were available. I feel like this is as big as, like, how everyone looks for the shoes. I mean, I'm not a shoe person like most people are, but how you look for the shoes or the games, it just felt like Black Friday all over again craziness.
Yeah, it reminds me of, video game system launches. I mean, it was 2 years before we could get enough PS5s for people to actually be able to just go and purchase one at will.
I do remember that because
And
you had to sign up online or something, and then it was, like, released to you, and you had so much time for you to actually get it.
it was insane. And so we're reminded of something like that. And then the different editions that they're selling. I was in Target today shopping and the books everywhere, but ain't none of those special editions. But they had some stuck out front. They had copies of Onyx Storm on
Okay.
every end cap by the register, the book section in the back. I mean, they are full up because everybody already got their book.
Mhm. But see, my thing is that goes into another tangent of mine that I will try so hard not to get into. But why is the cost of the plain version, regular hardback, why is that more expensive than the special editions?
Yeah, that I don't understand because, first of all, book prices in general are just out of control. Just a year ago, getting a hardcover book might be $25.
It's madness.
It's between $32 and $45 now, depending on the book. And this goes for any book.
It
Y-
depends on where you go.
So we're finding that because they are all aligned in pricing for books, it's hard to find these cheaper versions of it. I've seen novellas of less than 150 pages charging $22. You're not going to get that from me. And I love a novella. and they're beautiful because the covers are just incredible nowadays, but not built like that. I ain't got a job like that. I can't afford, I splurged and we went out last night. My wife's birthday is this month. And so we had a little date night and we were driving all over the place doing some book shopping and checking out some different bookstores. And we go in there and even at the used bookstores, half price books,
Hmm.
they need to change their name
They're expensive.
because unless you're in the teen or YA section, those books are not half price.
Mm-mm.
$12.49 for a book that came out, and especially a used copy of it 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's in good shape, but it's still not worth $12.49. And so we have a lot of difficulty in that. And then, of course, we have all of the new releases. Median value, $25.
Hmm.
That's not, with the cost of everything going up and the way the economy is, that's not doable. I imagine we're going to see an influx in libraries, in streaming services, Libby, where you can get the ebook or the audiobook for free using your library card.
Kindle Unlimited, where you pay a subscription and you can get as many as what, like 20? You can put them on your Kindle, your phone, whichever you can get the app.
I don't know, but we definitely hit the max because Emily
Mhm.
had to ask me which book she could delete so she could download another one the other day. And I'm like, why are you downloading extra books if you haven't read the other book? Get rid of one of your books.
I'm guilty of the same thing. It's like, I know I'm going to read it, but then it's like, oh, but I see another one. So which one of these can I delete to put that one in there? And yeah, I do the same thing.
But as we go through this, great for the industry. I
Mhm.
love to see our authors getting the support that
Mhm.
they want. I follow Books of Horror on Facebook, which is a community group for horror readers, but there are tons of authors in there and a lot of self-published authors or small publishing company authors in there that hit number one on the charts on Amazon for their selective niche because A, that group has millions of members, but B, Kindle Unlimited
Mhm.
allows the author to get paid per page
Yeah. So all you have to read is so many pages and you get money off of it.
in the way that Spotify changed streaming.
Mhm.
Here we are again with Kindle Unlimited and other services that allow this to reach new markets. And at the same time, I think the result has been the increase in print book costs.
That actually brings me to the audiobooks and how there's so many different apps now. Like before, you didn't have hardly any choices. It was like library through Libby, or it was Audible, where you had to pay the monthly fee of like $15, but you only got one book. And recently, I don't know if you have Audible, but recently, if you have the Audible subscription, like the Premium Pro, whatever, you have a ton of different free books that you can actually read as well. So it's not where you have to pay the $15 anymore and you just wait. You actually can listen to more books now for your $15.
I'll raise you one even better. For the same cost, I think it's an additional dollar or so. Everand has a huge selection of books, and you get 3 books for that cost.
Oh, you get three.
Audiobooks. You get 3 unlocks a month.
And see, I recently actually got rid of my subscription with Everend because they wanted me to change. And I had it where it was the one price for free for however many you had. Then I'm like, but wait, I don't want to increase my price or change my plan. I like the plan that I had. So I went over to Audible. Maybe I need to revisit Everend.
Think you might. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that if you are no longer supporting Amazon products, Audible is an Amazon product. So we need to mention things like
Hmm.
Libro FM,
Yeah.
where you get to support a local indie bookstore with your subscription or purchase of audiobooks. And so you pay $15 for one audiobook a month. And part of that money goes directly to Mindfair Books in Oberlin is my selection. There's a ton of local indie bookstores who are getting support from Libro.fm. And I fully want to plug that there because I think it's a resource that's underused and a lot of people don't know about it.
Well, I can say that I did not know about it and I just pulled it up on my phone and I think I'm about to sign up.
If you're going to pay for Audible, it's the same cost. And why
Mhm.
support Audible and Amazon?
When you can do locals. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I like
So
that.
I'd feel very guilty if I didn't at least mention it.
Well, thank you, because I'm going to look further on it and get 1 credit, 14.99, add credits whenever you need them. Yeah, it's very similar. Thank
Now,
you.
I will say they have a huge selection. Audible has the power behind them to
Mhm.
get Audible originals and full cast productions that are only found on Audible.
Yeah.
One of them being the Sandman audio adaptation, which has nothing but A-list cast of voice actors adapting the graphic novels. And I was a huge fan of that series and was looking forward to the new release. And of course, with Neil Gaiman being in his current situation, I believe it's being canceled right now, which is very sad for me because I really wanted to continue that series on there because, of course, I love the graphic novels. I love the Netflix show, canceled. I love the Audible adaptation, likely canceled. So, to partake in what I love and things keep getting taken from me, I'm a bit sad. But what can you do?
Honestly, I feel like we could continue on this whole I don't wanna say it, but it feels like a monopoly of these different apps. You just mentioned with the Audible and their Audible originals, and then you have all the dramatized versions and all those things. You can't get those everywhere. So it seems like each one of these apps have their own perk for getting them. So it's like you pay Audible and you support Amazon and you get all of the things that come with it. You support Libro FM, you could support a local bookstore. So each one, I think that's what I love so much about this whole entire community is that there's something for everyone to like how you feel you want to support.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're sitting inside of a library right now
Absolutely.
filming this podcast, and libraries are a vital lifeblood of our communities, and not just for books.
Hmm.
They offer services such as these meeting rooms. This is a warm, safe space for people to go who might not have one, and they're open 7 days a week, most of them. Libraries are invaluable. So I don't want to plug all these other things without telling you, like, yes, we have Libby and we have these other things,
Hmm.
but get down and talk to your local librarians and
Yes.
see what other services they have. I know I got an OD2 monitor to check the codes on my car from our local library. Like, there are so many different tools and resources available to you. Please go down and give them the love and support because I
Hmm.
don't know what's going to happen to libraries in the next 100 years.
I hope nothing happens to them. I really do enjoy going to the library and have recently started going with my son. We make it a whole thing where we go and he gets his books and I'm lucky if I can select and get books for myself, but it's definitely something that I encourage everyone to do is to get a library card. They're free. And if you don't want to use it for the physical content necessarily, you can still use it for their workshops. I mean, just a quick sum of you can do job fair type of stuff where they'll do resume writing. You can do your taxes, like just a lot. You can even learn how to make Cricut stuff.
Yeah, we have maker spaces and other incredible things here. It's a great resource for teens.
And
Um,
support, like, necessarily, I know that our local one has, like, a knitting club. You can go and take your supplies, and you have other people that will help you learn how to knit.
so what we're saying is, in a time of division, and we are very divisive right now, the library will be the one thing that saves us all.
Yes,
Well, I think this episode has come to a natural conclusion.
I think so. We talked about a lot.
We went on tangents and we
Mhm.
ranted for a little bit, and I could probably still keep going on because I can, but we definitely want to thank you all for listening into episode 5. We've had great love again for our podcast. People keep asking for new episodes. We're going to keep making them. And
Yes.
so until next time.
Happy reading.